Welcome back to this very special episode of Plus Life in partnership with AIDS 2020 Virtual. 2020 is the World Health Organization's Year of the Nurse, and our next guest was there at the dawn of the AIDS crisis on San Francisco's famous Ward 5B. Now, 2020 is the International Year of the Nurse, and I am joined by such a wonderful nurse. Guy Vandenberg from San Francisco is on with me. Tell me, Guy, why is it important to mark a global event like International Year of the Nurse?
Nurses are 60 to 80% of the global workforce. They're 50% of the workforce, the healthcare workforce in the US, and 90% of the workforce globally. Nurses deliver 80% of all HIV prevention and care services.
You were there at San Francisco General Hospital at the height of the AIDS epidemic. Can you share some of your personal experiences and how your role as a nurse and the nurses there on the wards with you has evolved since the height of the HIV epidemic?
Yeah, I came to 5A at the height of the epidemic at General, at the inpatient AIDS ward. I came from hospice. I had worked in hospice where we provided care for people who were dying and tried to make it as peaceful a death as possible and a death with dignity. At 5A, things were very different. I could use some of my hospice skills there, but we provided a full spectrum of care. We treated opportunistic infections very aggressively. There were chest tubes. There were patients that normally would have been in an ICU if there had been space in the ICUs. There wasn't. So we learned high tech. I learned high tech medical care there, but we were able to make it a fluid thing as what the patient needed, whether they needed more palliative care or very aggressive treatment. And then, fortunately, I lived long enough to see the advent of highly effective antiretroviral therapy, which was, of course, a game changer.
How do you think stigma has changed or persisted over the time, over all these years, especially towards HIV?
Wow, that is, we could have an entire session on that one. I think stigma.
Sadly,
you know,
right?
HIV. It's about sex. It's about injection drug use, the transmission. So think of things that are more stigmatizing. Stigma comes from the Greek for marking, and the marking of slaves and criminals, usually by branding. And a lot has changed, and a lot has not changed. As Tom Coates famously says, I always, when I speak publicly, I always quote him: HIV points its finger to everything that's wrong in society.
Well, and again, I mean, because of the fantastic work that you and your colleagues and nurses all around the world do, not just in providing care, but as you said, in building that level of trust. It's so important. What policy and program barriers remain in your line of work that just drive you crazy?
That's a deep question. As you know, not only do we not have a national healthcare system in the United States, we really don't have much of a healthcare system at all. It's fragmented, it's broken. And so access to therapy, access to care is a problem. There are many hurdles, even under the best of circumstances. Our patients, who we've seen for many, many years, once they get healthcare, if they get a job and they get healthcare, they can no longer come to us. They now have to go to another provider because we don't accept insurance. So it's many things that are broken, and I think access to care is one of the things that's broken. Drug pricing is one of the things that is broken globally. Most people who die with HIV die of TB as an opportunistic infection, and our friends at J&J just came out with a very important drug Midaquiline that is too expensive for most countries in sub-Saharan Africa to afford to treat patients with drug-resistant TB. So we have many more fights to fight with our friends and as well as sometimes with our allies in order to advocate for our patients. And that is not only true, of course, for HIV.
Yeah, well, listen, it's a big ask, but we ask you to keep fighting the fight on behalf of all of us. Guy Vandenberg, thank you so much for all you do and for what all nurses around the world do in taking care of people, not just, as you said, those of us living with HIV, but just generally taking care of us. 2020, the International Year of the Nurse. Guy Vandenberg, thank you so much. When we come back, we meet a Welsh rugby star living with HIV.